What's good, Atlanta? This is the Blog and Dirty podcast, where Dirty Bird is the word. If you haven't heard, I'm your host, John Buhler, lead writer for FanSided. Got an exciting show for you guys here today. Before we begin, be sure to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, give this thing a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. It really helps the show grow. Again, this is an Atlanta Falcons podcast for FanSided on behalf of the website Blog and Dirty. I'm your host, John Buhler, lead writer FanSided. I cover college football predominantly, but I'm a diehard Atlanta Falcons fan. So let's get down to it. Before we begin, I want to thank everybody who has subscribed to the show in recent weeks. We're at 364 subscribers, one away from having one of you for every day of the week, and two away if we include a leap year. So really exciting time here with the show. Love the offseason content. Love the engagement that everybody has been giving me here. Love the support. Love everything about this. It's a new year. We got NFL scouting combine coming up here very soon. Probably touch on that a little bit more on next episode. I mean, again, we don't have a first round pick, so I'm not super invested in the NFL draft. I'm more interested in what's going on with free agency. And on that note, let's get started with our first run of the day. I'm going to run with this. Let's bring Atlanta area native Bradley Chubb home. The former Denver Broncos and Miami Dolphins edge rusher who starred at North Carolina State, grew up locally. I believe he played at Hillgrove High School. I think he's the extended cousin of, former Georgia running back, Cleveland Browns, Houston Texans guy, Nick Chubb. This is perfect. Look, the Dolphins, they need to reset this quite a bit. They're the other franchise that has a new general manager and a new head coach. They fired Chris Grier midway through the season, and then at the end of the year, they moved on from Mike McDaniel. They ended up hiring John Eric Sullivan away from the Packers, and he brought with him former Packers defensive coordinator and Boston College head coach Jeff Hafley to lead the way. Dolphins are not going to be very good. I don't think very much of what they're going to be. They did beat us last year. This is a team that I've not really respected for a very long time, but they know what they got to do to kind of reset this thing, and I wish them the very best. They've made a few decisions to cut some players, including Chubb. And even though he may not have been a Pro Bowler in a couple of years, that doesn't really matter. I think he still had, 8.5 sacks last year for the Dolphins. This is why it's important. This is why it's important to consider bringing him in. Not only could you use him to effectively offset losing Leonard Floyd in free agency, kind of that kind of player, but we are looking at the very strong possibility that James Pierce Jr. may not play another down for the Atlanta Falcons. Again, the Falcons have not cut him. They've not released him. They've not done anything yet because they got to let the legal situation play itself out. It's all about the finances, and if there's some sort of commissioner's exempt list that he can go on from Commissioner Roger Goodell, then they'll do that. Again, it's a really crummy situation all the way around, but you got to find a pass rusher to kind of put alongside Jalen Walker. And even though Pierce was the guy that eclipsed 10 sacks, Chubb's done it before. Walker's kind of more of a chess piece kind of guy. I think this opens up the possibility of being able to return, get Leonard Floyd back another deal, maybe get Arnold Ebiketie back another deal. But I think Chubb would work. I think this would be, you bring in a guy who's wholesome. You bring in a guy who's from here, grew up in Austell, over by Six Flags. I think this could work. I think this is something to certainly consider. I also kind of feel look, the Broncos have always known defense. Even when they're bad, they usually have good defensive players, and he was part of that. And then, with the Dolphins, even though they've been a screwy organization for most of my life, they usually have guys who get after the passer, usually have really strong players in their defensive front seven, and even in the secondary at times. So that's kind of been a calling card that I will always view the Dolphins very positively. So I just kind of feel like that he's out there. You can afford to get him. And I mean, look, we're kind of looking at the situation of whatever happens with Pierce. I think there's other guys. I think Darnell Mooney is a very easy cut casualty. That may free up the capital to re-sign Kyle Pitts on the transition tag or the franchise tag at tight end. So we have something to work there. I think if you're able to free up a little bit more money, I think Chubb could work. You bring him here on a 1-on-1 type of deal. And again, I don't necessarily know how the cap works. I kind of mostly write about the narratives. I think for what the team needs, they need a guy who can come in here. You grew up in the shadow of Mercedes-Benz Stadium or the Georgia Dome, come back home, help get his hometown team to the playoffs. I think this is something that I could certainly get behind. This is something I think the fan base could get behind. I think of all the guys who were certainly, released last couple of days from other teams that Atlanta could be looking at. And again, that's kind of what the bulk of today's show is going to be centered around. I would look very hard at Bradley Chubb. I think this is, if he's cooked, I get it. You got to kick the tires on this, but for the most part, he's not going to cost as much as he did with the Dolphins. This is a cap saving measure. You get him on a discount. You can maybe get him to take a hometown discount, if you will. He comes in here, makes it work. Although I think losing Rutenberg to the Browns, he's going to be the new DC for Todd Monken there in Cleveland. You still have Jeff Ulbrich in the building, and I think that he's going to have a very strong say with what they want to do defensively. I think that bodes well for Caden Ellis to potentially return to Atlanta, even though he kind of was more of a Terry Fontenot guy, came over, from the Saints. We'll see what happens here. We'll see what, Ian Cunningham wants to do. I also think the fact that, he is an Atlanta guy. He grew up in Roswell, in the vicinity of the city as well. I think Chubb in Atlanta works. And again, I'm just kind of being a fan with this. I would love to see him on here. I'd love to see us continue to get better as a pass rusher. Plus, I think he could also, be a really good mentor and teach Jalen Walker some more about disrupting the passer, getting better at his craft. So I would be in favor of this for the money, and assuming the medicals work out, I think this is okay. Yeah, let's bring Chubb home, baby. All right. Second round of the day, another guy that I think would be interesting. What if Mike Evans comes to Atlanta? Think about that. Let that sit in there for a second. I think Mike Evans wants to play year 13 out of Texas A&M. I think he only played 3 years of college football in College Station. He spent his entire Hall of Fame level career, his Hall of Fame career, for lack of a better word, with the Buccaneers. He produced when the team stunk. He produced when the team's great. And even though I think last year he was kind of beat up a little bit, it does seem as though he is interested in playing in year 13. And I think he's willing to test free agency. He doesn't really have any ties to Atlanta. He played at A&M. He's played for the rival Buccaneers. But I think this would be a move that you could use to really unlock some of the best of what could make Drake London a superstar. When the Falcons drafted Drake London, at number 8 a couple of years ago out of USC as the first wide receiver, the idea was he could be the next Mike Evans. And he's certainly trending in that direction. He's had flashes of this. He's been productive when he's out there. He missed a lot of games last year due to injury. But even though there might be some level of a duplicate out there, whereas I think Mooney was kind of more of the deep threat guy, maybe you could take a flyer on somebody else there as well. Maybe you could draft somebody. I don't know specifically what Ian Cunningham wants to do, but I think if you bring Mike Evans to Atlanta, close out his career, he wouldn't be the first guy to turn heel within the division. Warwick Dunn spent the last half of his career pretty much here. We've had plenty of guys from the Saints come over here. This is who you play twice a year, every year. We know all about Mike Evans and what he can do. But I think the reason that this could switch the NFC South paradigm a little bit is because, look, Tampa has been the top dog. They went 8-9 last year, same as us, same as the Panthers, and due to tie-breaking scenarios with the Panthers sweeping us, they ultimately got in and won the NFC South. Tampa is the only team in the division that I would say is trending down. I think Carolina is ascending. I think the Saints are ascending. I would say that we arguably are, or we're there. When you get a player who has been a pillar of an organization for over a decade and you lose them, you're not just losing what the production, you're also losing a bit of what makes that culture special. And look, they've got a new OC coming in. It's going to be Zach Robinson taking over for Josh Grizzard. Just a new OC every year. Zach Robinson replaces Josh Grizzard, who replaces Ian Cohen, who replaces Dave Cadelis, who replaces Byron Leftwich. And this is the Blogging Day podcast. Been absolutely wild in Tampa. I think when you have a player of Mike Evans' caliber leave, that doesn't help Baker Mayfield. You've got an emerging star there in Emeka Egbuka, and he'll get his. I think we know that. Jalen McMillan might be a great player for them as well in time. Again, he's kind of been injury prone coming out of Washington. We'll see. But it does kind of look like, Mike Evans' career is certainly on the downtick. Probably the same thing with former Penn Stater and longtime Buccaneers guy Chris Godwin as well. And again, this kind of feels like the last year Todd Bowles is going to be the head coach in Tampa. We'll see what happens if Jason Light gets another opportunity to be, a general manager with somebody else. But, he's earned enough equity there. And Evans was a pick that I think he was the first pick that Light made as a GM. He's like, this is an Hall of Fame person, just Hall of Fame, everything you need, a pillar of the organization. And this is a guy that spoke highly of. He loved Jameis Winston as a person as well, obviously a little more carefree and everything like that. There have been some dudes out there. I think he did not like Devin White at all. I remember reading that article for The Athletic way back in the day. But I'll say this. If Evans comes to Atlanta, then I think, that makes us arguably better. And I think it makes the Buccaneers worse. More importantly, you have a guy who's won Super Bowls, a guy who's won divisions, a guy who's going to be in Canton, possibly a first ballot guy. There has been a bit of a logjam at wide receiver. We still don't have Torrey Holt in Canton yet, which is weird. And he was in the greatest show on turf. So I would be in favor of this too. I think he's going to have other suitors. And I wouldn't necessarily say that the hometown draw is going to be there for Mike Evans because he's not from Atlanta. I think it would be interesting to at least kick the tires and see if he'd want to come here. And on that note, let's get on to the second half of our show with some pass. I'm passing on this one, man. Let's avoid Tyreek Hill at all costs. I understand that Tyreek Hill is from the southern part of the state. I think he's from Peach or Coffee County, if I'm not mistaken. He played his college football, I think, initially at Oklahoma State, got kicked off that team, played junior college, fifth-round pick by the Chiefs, won Super Bowls there, makes a bunch of money with the Dolphins. Help him have some success, but again, he's too problematic off the field, and he's coming off a major lower leg injury. Hill's one of the fastest guys ever. I will never deny his talent. He's just an absolute blazer with the ball in his hands. Just at his peak, phenomenal. One of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He might be a Hall of Fame level player, but personality-wise, not at all. And again, I don't want to assassinate anybody's character. Just read about Tyreek Hill, and you kind of can come to the conclusion for that yourself. So don't let's not dwell on that too much. Here's what I'm saying, why this would be avoid all costs, please. Even though I think he could be the idea of the deep threat there, I still think he views himself as a number one wide receiver. And it comes down to ego, which is something that I don't think he's ever really been interested in suppressing. I mean, he kind of did that, as three behind Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and I guess Andy Reid in Kansas City because he kind of had to. But what's Atlanta really have? They have Bijan Robinson. Okay, that's a guy that maybe you could okay, this dude's better than me. People know what he was talking about, and I'll finish the show talking about Bijan as well. But, maybe he's a hindrance to Penix's development. Maybe he's a hindrance to London's ascension to stardom. Maybe he gets in the way of Pitts. And again, I'm just thinking about this from a negative lens because, look, guy's kind of a bad dude. And you bring him in here, in the wake of what you're dealing with regarding James Pierce Jr., optically that's terrible. You're not talking about two guys who are upstanding individuals there in Bradley Chubb and Mike Evans. You need more good. You need more positive. You want to have more guys like Bijan Robinson and Chris Lindstrom and AJ Terrell on this team to really help you get out of this decade-long quagmire we've been stuck in. It's been awful. It's been frustrating, but it's our reality. Look, and I'm not going to beat around the bush here. If we do end up signing Tyreek Hill, it's a business. I understand that. It's not great. But, the Dolphins kind of play better without him. And it kind of feel like the same sort of thing. Did he get in the way of Jalen Waddle's development there in Miami? Did he really elevate to a Tunga Vailoa? I can't definitively say that he did that. He's still great. He's going to be able to get what he wants wherever he goes. There might be other teams out there that are more desperate than us for a wide receiver. We do probably need one because I don't think Darnell Mooney is going to be coming back. But, it remains to be seen what's going to happen there within the context of what Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees want to do offensively. Again, these guys, have Cleveland ties. Tommy Rees has ties to Alabama and Notre Dame as well. So maybe we're looking in a different direction there. I just kind of think the juice isn't worth the squeeze here with Tyreek Hill. If you were to bring him in, there's a chance, he could be disruptive in the locker room. There's a chance that, he could also get us to the NFC Championship game. But I think more importantly, if he just had his baggage, then I think you could put him you could just accept the fact for what he is in a short-term deal and just put him out there. Again, I want to win. I understand character and morals are great, but obviously we live in a world where that doesn't matter anymore. It's really sad. But I will say this. Because he had that ankle injury, and again, his greatest attribute is his speed, this is something that will dissipate with time. He's firmly in his 30s. He's not much younger than me. And players fall off a cliff physically. And I think that there have been players who have injuries like this that just are never the same in multitude of sports. Looking at it today, I saw this, Chris Bryant is still dealing with back injuries there with the Colorado Rockies. I mean, he was the best player for the Cubs, when they won the World Series a decade ago. And he's become the Anthony Rendon of the National League. We talked about, I think at work the other day, we talked about Tracy McGrady and Corey Long going to the Magic, and Grant Hill fell apart, and Tracy McGrady became a superstar. You hate it when people lose their athleticism, but obviously Tyreek Hill is a very polarizing player. And again, I don't think we need a lightning rod like this. If the dollar amount makes sense, then maybe you do it. But I think we're going to have a lot more cap space than this to potentially go in that direction. And again, I want to have positive things to say about this team this offseason and moving forward, because it has largely been a joyless slog covering this team and being a fan of this team. It's been hard. But you know what? We're hanging in there. We got each other. There are no bandwagon Falcons fans left because the bandwagon's been on fire. and this is the Blog Identity Podcast. And on that note, let's get out of here with some fun. Let's get out of here with something that's very interesting. I came across this article on ESPN.com. And again, Jeremy Fowler has been hyping up the Falcons big time. He talked about Michael Penix Jr. last year taking a big step forward. I don't know if he did, but he said he did. He got hurt, though, so we'll see what happens there. There were moments where Penix really shined. He also wrote something to the tune of Bijan Robinson is going to win NFL MVP, and the Falcons are going to win the NFC South. I'm punting on this because that would be great if it happened. I'm not sure it will. Look, let's break this down in multiple ways. Bijan Robinson winning MVP and the Atlanta Falcons winning the NFC South. I think the latter is more likely to happen because the division's not very good. We may have the most talented team here, but, talent doesn't win games. Players do, and execution does. Carolina's the defending champs. We really struggled with them, last couple of years, particularly under Raheem Morris. For as good as he was against the Bucs, he was just as bad versus the Panthers. The Saints, decent. He held his own with them, I would say. That doesn't matter anymore. He's off to San Francisco to be Robert Sala's replacement on Kyle Shanahan's staff. When it comes to winning the NFC South, I think Bijan Robinson has to play well for us to do that. I wouldn't necessarily say he needs to be MVP. But if he plays, at a Pro Bowl, All-Pro level like he did this past year, that certainly fits that mold. The other thing with this, too, that I think is very important to understand here is twofold. One, the amount of production, the amount of carries and touches he had last year, most often when players have that type of usage, they pull back. This has happened with other people. This happened with Eddie George. This happened with Jamal Anderson. This happened with Christian McCaffrey. Maybe they come back and bounce back. McCaffrey seems to have done that. Obviously, Jamal Anderson wasn't the same after the knee injury. And Eddie George, had a nice career at the Titans, but not quite a Hall of Famer, even though he did win MVP. I always think back of the late 90s, early 2000s, Eddie George is just a phenomenal running back for the Titans. The Aaron McNair era when that team was really, really good. Been a long time since that. Anyway, I would say, if Bijan gets that level of usage, he could do it. But I think the other thing that plays into this is if that were to happen, then you're probably banking on something unfortunate, which is Tyler Algier walking free agency. Look, this is the inside baseball with this. I think he's enjoyed and loved playing in Atlanta. I think his family has thought the Falcons are very highly of them and giving him an opportunity as a day 3 pick out of BYU. But this is kind of going to be the anti-Michael the Burner Turner because he's behind his version of LaDainian Tomlinson and Bijan Robinson. Algier is going to go get first. He's going to get starting running back money, and he's going to go to a team that is in dire need of a running back. I don't know who that is. Maybe he goes to the Chiefs. Maybe he goes. I don't know. I don't really know who really, really, really needs a running back right now. There's somebody out there that's going to pay him, and I don't think it's worth it to have that much of a price allocation on 2-star running backs. And again, unless your offense is just going to be strictly running based, Penix isn't going to run. Whoever you bring in as a running quarterback, I don't think they're going to be a runner. That's not really the context of what we do. But, it's going to be a really crummy situation like with Drew Dahlman a year ago where it's he's a great player. We hit on a mid-round pick, but then the price point's too high and we can't bring him back. And I hate that about the NFL so much. When you're a team that's not good and you hit on a player like that, when you don't really draft well in the latter parts of it, like, shouldn't he be rewarded? Like, look at George Kittle with the 49ers. They turned it around pretty quickly with him. But, like, this is a 5th-round pick out of Iowa. He's heading towards a Hall of Fame career. Like, and he's going to play for the 49ers. He's going to be a legend for them, you know? But it feels like if we drafted our version of George Kittle, it's almost like he has to walk, and that just really sucks for us because we've hit so hard on the first-round picks. Like, every first-round pick we pretty much had the last 8 or so years has been a hit. I mean, we got to see what happens with Penix, but obviously Lennon's been a hit. Robinson's been a hit. Lindstrom's been a hit. Probably going to let McGarry go, but he's been good. He was good. Terrell's a hit. Pitts has been a hit, I would say. Borderline, you can argue with the wall with that. I think I'm more likely to bring Pitts back than not. But look, if Bijan wins MVP, that would be incredible. But I think if he plays to an MVP caliber level like this, he did this past year, where he's like an Offensive Player of the Year finalist, then I think that bodes pretty well in terms of the Falcons winning the NFC South. I think, like, who did I say? Like, you're looking kind of at a quarterback who's never won one before. That's kind of the growing trend here. You know, we saw it with Matthew Stafford this past year. We saw it with Josh Allen 2 years ago. If the Lions have a great year, I've always argued Jared Goff could do it. If Justin Herbert finally puts it all together, as opposed to just being just I don't know. I'm not gonna do any more Justin Herbert discounting or disparagement here. Just you already know my thoughts on Justin Herbert. I don't think he's so overrated. But, you know, Caleb Williams wins MVP. I think that's in the realm of possibility. You know, maybe Cam Ward really takes off in Brian Daboll's offense. Who honestly knows? It's going to be absolutely wild. And what I do know is this was episode 81 of the Blog and Dirty podcast. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow along with the show on YouTube at Blog and Dirty FS. You can follow along on X at Blog and Dirty. Again, I run the YouTube page and I don't do the Twitter page. You know, give us a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere with this podcast. Give us a comment. Let me know you've subscribed to the channel. And if you know you've got a public shout out, like I'll give you guys your time of day on the next show. Again, we do this like every Wednesday, you know, late morning, get this out there pretty quickly. Had a few free agency thoughts. I thought kind of changed the format at the last minute here to talk about, you know, Mike Evans and Tyreek Hill. I thought those were interesting things that I could give a couple minutes to. I knew Bradley Chubb was going to be the lead here, and Bijan Robinson was going to be the closer for this. But yeah, I've got an exciting time. Excited to be a Falcons fan. I guess it's always exciting. You know, it's the offseason. We haven't lost any games yet. We're gonna build. We got a new era here. We got the guys leading the charge here with Matt Ryan as president of football, Kevin Stefanski as head coach, and Ian Cunningham as general manager. If that triumvirate holds together and holds true, we could be entering a new and exciting era of Atlanta Falcons football that you and I and everybody else desperately wants. Lord knows that we need it. Once again, thanks for listening. And this is the Blog and Dirty Podcast.